In this video, I'm going to show you how to do progress invoicing in QuickBooks Online. A lot of people call it progress billing, but in QuickBooks, they use the term progress invoicing. Okay, so first of all, we need to decide, do you even need progress invoicing? So if you already know that you need progress invoicing, then you can skip this intro here and jump forward. But let's go over first if you even need it. So you would need it if you have, let's say, you're doing work for a customer, a client, and you know it's going to be for one full amount. So let's say $100,000, or it doesn't have to be that amount. It could be $5,000. But the way you have it set up with your customer is on purpose you're going to be sending them a few invoices, and you're going to split up the total and only invoice them for part of it. And then maybe a week later, you invoice them for the next piece of it until the whole amount is paid. So this would be, normally you're just going to create an invoice for the amount that they owe you, you invoice them, they pay it, and that's it. But there are some businesses where they split it up and they will just send them maybe 2 or 3 invoices or more invoices until the total is paid off. So if that is your situation, you realize, yes, I'm going to have to send multiple invoices or more than one invoice until they've paid off the total amount for this project, for this job, then that's what you need. You need progress invoicing. Okay, so there's a couple steps in order to do this. I have already covered in another video how to create an invoice, how to record that an invoice is paid. That's in a separate video. So this will be, I'll just assume that we've already covered that together. So we'll just go on to when you need to do multiple invoices for one job or one project. Okay, so how to do that? The first step is to turn on a setting. This is a one-time step, so you don't have to do this every time. But this first step is turn on a setting in the top right corner. So we're going to go to this gear, top right corner, and the first column, account and settings. We'll click that. And on the left menu, it'll say sales. Sometimes with QuickBooks, the settings takes a second to load, but sales will show up. So once it loads, sales, we're going to click that and then scroll down until we see this row, progress invoicing. So this is what we want, progress invoicing, but it's off. We don't want that. So let's click either the row or just click the pencil. And we're going to turn this setting on. So now it's on, but make sure you save it. So turn it on and then save it. And now we're done. So we'll go to the bottom corner and we're done. It says it's on now. Okay, so now it's on. You don't have to do that every time. Okay, so what's the normal first step now that that's on? We're going to create an estimate. So in order to do that, we're going to come to the top left corner, click the plus new button, and start with an estimate. Now, if you're saying, wait, my business doesn't do estimates, I don't need estimates, that's fine. If you don't actually use estimates, that is perfectly fine, except for to do progress invoicing, the first step is creating an estimate, but you don't have to send it. So if you don't do estimates with clients or customers, then just do it in order to do the progress invoicing, but don't send it to them, that you'll only see this. So this is just in order to do multiple invoices. That's how QuickBooks has it set up. But if you do estimates, then you could send the estimate and the invoices. So it just depends on how you do your business. Okay, so we're just going to do this estimate purely because we need to in order to continue. All right, so we're going to select our customer, and we're just going to select somebody's name on our customer list. All right, so we're going to select Travis. And because he's already on the customer list of this sample account, then it brought up his email and address. If you don't have the address of your customer, or you don't need to put it on here, you could leave this blank. That's fine. All right, so here, estimate date. So if you're not going to send this, you could just use today's date. But if you are, you could select the date that you want it to show. This is optional as well. If you want to put an expiration date, you can fill it in, but you don't have to. All right, so we'll come down here. now let's fill in the actual estimate. Let's fill in these rows. So the first thing we need to know, what are we putting here? Whatever is going to be on the invoices. So whatever you're going to charge your customer for, and you want it to show on the invoice, then it needs to be on the list here. So let's say you're going to send them 3 invoices, and there'll be a different number of rows on each invoice. The full list needs to be here on this estimate. So let's do an example of that now. So we're just going to pick a few things that we're going to charge them for. Even if it's not all right away, if we're going to charge them, it's part of this total, it needs to be on this list. So let's say we're design services, we're going to select that. Let's say we're going to charge them for lighting at some point. So part of this project total includes design services, lighting, and installation. Okay, so that's this project. All right, we need to update our amounts over here. So let's say for the design services, let's say we're going to be charging $100,000. All right, so let's say it's $100,000, and for the lighting, it's going to be $1,000, and for the installation, it's going to be $30,000. Okay, so a big job. So here we've got each of our rows. We filled out the information that we wanted, and let's say that the lighting here, that we're going to charge sales tax, so that will be checked off. And notice for the services, there's no sales tax for that, so they're not checked. Okay, so we're going to just look this over, make sure this all looks right. And this is the total. So the project total, or the job total, that the customer will have to pay us this total, but we're just going to split it up. They don't have to pay it all at once. So this is where the progress invoicing comes into play. So we're going to save it. We're going to save this estimate. And again, you don't have to send it. Your customer never has to see this estimate if you don't want that. So we're just going to click save, and we're going to create the first invoice. So now let's say it's time to send out that first invoice for part of this amount. So we're going to click create invoice. And because we turned on that setting earlier, now this box shows up. So this pops up, and we're going to select the third option. For most people, most situations, you'll select the third option, create invoice. And now it's going to create a new invoice. All this on the right here doesn't apply to our example, so I'm going to close that. Okay, so it created an invoice based off of what we entered in the estimate. So this invoice is linked to the estimate. So that saves time because it brought it all up from the estimate, which is great. And now let's first decide the customer's the same, so we'll leave all that, but let's decide what's the invoice date. So let's say that we created that estimate, but we're already ready to send the estimate. Sorry, it's time to send that first estimate. So we're going to select the invoice date is on this Friday. All right, or let's put Monday. Okay, all right, so let's say that the first invoice is going to be August 15th. But notice the invoice is for $0 right now. So of course we need to fix that. So this is where you're going to decide, of everything you put on that estimate, what is it that you want included on this first invoice? Okay, so let's say I'm just going to charge for half of this first row. For this custom design, $100,000, I'm only going to charge, this first invoice is just going to be for half of this. I don't want to charge them yet for the second or third row. I'm not ready to invoice for that yet. So for those down here, we're going to come over to the trash symbol, click on the trash icon, and say remove line. Be careful, don't click the green, don't click unlink it. So just click that trash icon and say remove line. So that way it's still going to be linked from the estimate. We just don't want it to show on this first invoice. So we want to do this again. Remove the line, don't unlink it, just remove line. Okay, so now it only shows that first row. That's what we want, but we don't want to charge them for the 100,000. So we're going to come to the center and click there and say for the amount of 50,000. Okay, so that way it shows we're doing half of that 100,000. Over here on the right is the amount that is being invoiced for this row. So for this row of that 100,000, the amount we're invoicing is 50,000. And because there's only one row, it's also just showing in the total as well. So that's easy. All right, so here we've got our 50,000. So the project total is, they'll be paying us a lot more, but for right now, for this date, we're just seeing just part of the amount. Okay, so for 50,000, and we're going to save it. You could save and send it, where QuickBooks will send an email. You could click save and send, or if you're not sending it, you're going to do a print invoice, or you're just not ready to send it, then you can come over here and click to the arrow and click save and close. Okay, so you can either send and have it emailed or just close it. Okay, so now let's say that it's a few days later and Travis has now paid you for the $50,000 because he's a great customer. So we're going to come over to sales on the left menu because we need to record that invoice was paid. How to do that is in a separate video, so I'll do that part quickly. All right, so we're going to come over to left menu sales, and we're going to come to either all sales. You could go to all sales, or you can go to estimates. So because you're doing progress invoicing, it's probably just going to be easier to come straight to estimates. So you're on this estimates page, but you could also see it on all sales as well. Either way, you'll get there. Okay, so we're here in the estimates page, and we need to find this estimate that we made for him. And let's find it. It's this one. Okay, so here we've got this first estimate, and we've already created the invoice. So we just want to select it. We want to, or click the pencil. We'll click the pencil and open up that estimate. Notice on the right side, it's very small, but on the right side, it says one linked invoice. So if you have, let's say, 5 invoices that will eventually be linked to this estimate, then they'll be listed here on the right. So it'll keep it all linked over here. So right now we've only just created that one estimate, or one invoice. So that's where we can get back to it. So you will notice that if you look at the first row, notice we only invoiced for 50,000. So it tracks it all here in this estimate. So this is why, even if your business does not do estimates, it's just a required part, because it will track what is the balance. You've invoiced them once, but you want to see, well, what's left that they owe me? So, and how much have I invoiced for them so far? So that's where you can track it all in the estimate. So again, you don't ever have to send this, your client doesn't have to see this, but it's just great for tracking purposes. So here we can see that first row that we've invoiced for 50,000, and what's left of this row is the remaining 50,000 that they'll owe. Okay, and then we haven't invoiced for the second or third row at all. Okay, so we are going to go to that invoice. Let's go up here to click on the one linked invoice, click on the invoice, and we want to just receive payment. We want to record Travis did pay us a few days later, so we're going to click receive payment. The payment date, this is the date that you received payment. So sometimes it'll just put today's date because you're doing it now, but it'll be the date that you receive payment. Okay, so we have, let's say that it was a few days later on this Thursday, August 18th, that he paid us. And let's say he paid us by check. This was the check number. All right, and it's checked off the invoice. It's already checked off for us. And he paid us 50,000. So again, this is a separate video if you want to go into this in more detail. But yeah, it's just 50,000. We're just recording that invoice has been paid. Okay. So now let's let's click back into our estimate and see what it looks like. So we've got that one invoice. Notice it didn't update because we recorded the payment. It's just updating because we made an invoice. All right, so we created that first invoice. Now it's time to create our second invoice because he still owes us more money. We call him And if you come down here, you can say remaining subtotal. So he's paid us 50,000, right? He's paid us 50,000, but he owes us still for 80 few days later, and we're ready, or maybe the next week, and we're ready to create that second invoice. So what do? We can click create invoice. We'll create invoice and select that third option. All right. And now it will create a second invoice that's still linked to that estimate for tracking. We don't need this stuff on the right. All right, so here we're still not ready for row 2 and 3. We're not going to invoice them for these 2 rows. So we're just going to take it off, remove the line, remove line. Okay. So we've only done 50,000. We're ready to do the other half of it. But this time, last time I had it selected as amount. You could also say percent. So I'm just going to say 50%. You could select it that way. So you could say amount and actually type in the 50,000, or you could select percent and put 50%, and they'll calculate it for you. And here we've got our amount. So this is the amount we want to make sure, is this correct? Is this what we want to invoice them for on this invoice? So yes, in this case we do. And let's fix our invoice date. So let's say it's the next Monday, and we're going to invoice them for the other half of this row 1. Okay, so we'll come down here and see 50,000, 50,000. Okay, so everything looks good. We're going to save and close. Okay, so that's our second invoice. And it's going to load just a second. It's coming. All right, there it is. Now, so let's say that now it's a few days later in that next week, and Travis paid that other 50,000, that other half. So now we're going to come back in, and we can click into our estimate. We're going to enter into our estimate, and notice, let's see what it looks like. That first row, $100,000. The 100,000 has been invoiced. So we did 50 and 50. So now this first row has been fully invoiced across 2 invoices, and we don't need to create any more invoices for this row. And now it'll check it off. So now we've invoiced for the full amount. So now this row is done. Great. So now we can scroll down and see what's left. Well, he owes us 31,000. He's paid us, Travis has paid us 100,000, and now he has a remaining balance of 31,000. Okay, so we're going to come over to the top left and quickly just record that second invoice that's been paid. So quickly on the right side, just make that second invoice. He paid it on that next Thursday with the check. And it was for this invoice, so that's what's checked off. The amount that we received was 50,000. It's all correct. Save. Okay. All right. So that second invoice has been paid. So now we're ready to create that third invoice. And he had a balance of 31,000. Or those second row 2 and row 3. We haven't invoiced for him for that yet. Okay. So how to do that? We can do what we've been doing, just clicking the pencil and opening it up, but you could click here and say convert to invoice. So this will create the invoice that's linked to this estimate. So that's what we'll do for our third invoice, convert to invoice. And our third option is selected, create invoice. All right, we don't need this. Okay. So here we've got our third invoice. Notice in the top left, it says 1 linked estimate. So that's good. That's what we want. It is linked to it. And if you were to click on it, you could see the information, make sure, is it linked to the right estimate? Did I click the right one? So you could click it and see it. You could even click this blue estimate and go back to the estimate if you want to make sure, is this linked to the right one? Okay, so that is correct. Okay, so let's say that it is that following Monday, and we've already invoiced for that row 1. So notice it's not here. We didn't even have to click the trash icon because we've invoiced for the whole amount. So it's not going to show up here. Row 2 and 3, we're ready to invoice and we want to invoice for both amounts. So we can just say, either you just want to put in 1,000, type it in, 1,000, or you could say, no, I want to do a percent and say 100% of this row. Okay, so either way, you could type in the amount or you could type in a percent and let it calculate for you. You can also change the description if you need, but I would recommend, because it's a software, I would recommend if you need to change the description, do that back on the estimate. So make sure it looks, this part all looks how you want it to on the estimate. Don't make any changes. Don't make any changes of the service or description on the invoice. Do any updates on the estimate. So make those changes on the estimate and then create the invoice based off of the estimate. Okay, so in this case, this is all right. We want it like this. And we'll double check on the right side. Does the amount column have the right amounts? So yes, it is for 1,000 for this row. Yes, 30,000 for this row. Subtotal, yes, 31,000. And because this had sales tax for the lighting, it's calculating and adding on the sales tax. So the total of this invoice is $31,080. So we're going to save it, save and close. All right, so let's see what happened with our invoice, our estimate. Now, because we've invoiced for the whole amount, not that he's paid the whole amount, but because we've invoiced the whole amount, now it says the status has been updated to converted. So you've fully converted the whole amount into invoices. Before it said accepted. So we were still in the process of sending out invoices, but now we've fully invoiced this amount. So it says converted. Let's click that pencil and see what our estimate looks like now. And as you might be seeing from at this point with Progress Invoicing, pretty much everything is based off of the estimate. So any changes, if you need to change the service name, change it here in the estimate. If you need to change an amount, change it here in the estimate. If you need to add rows, if you're a business that it's a project that is changing as you go, you're invoicing as you go, but the project and the amount changes as you go as well, make those changes on the estimate. Add rows. If now let's say you're towards the ends of the project and the customer says, oh, let's add this thing to it. Let's add this on. So you can add rows as you go. All right, so now we're going to see that every row is closed. And the only thing we haven't done is on that third invoice, we didn't record that it was paid. So we'll just do that real quick, but you can see all the invoices you've created that are linked to this estimate. They're all listed right here. And if you need to get back to any of them, you can click right into it. Okay, so we invoiced them for 50, 50, and then 31. All right, so let's just quickly, yes, we want to leave. All right, so let's quickly record that third invoice that it was paid. All right, let's see, it was that Thursday. And this time he paid with a credit card. Okay, and then that invoice is checked off for us. This is the amount that was received. So we'll save and close. Okay, so there you go. So there is the progress invoicing for Travis, our pretend customer. And now all the rows have been checked off. You come down here, the remaining subtotal, 0. So he's paid the full amount, or at least we've invoiced. It will show that you have invoiced the full amount, because it's just kind of using accrual basis, but going off of that. But you'll have to go to the invoices to see if you've recorded the payment. But the rows are checked off. The balance is 0 because you've invoiced the full amount. All right, and then again, you can make any changes. You could add more rows, and then it will update. So let's do that real quick. But let's say at the last minute, he wants some more design services last minute. All right, so let's say that is for 2,000. Notice the total has updated. So it's okay if you've invoiced for everything and then there were changes after that. then you add an additional row, you make a change, and then it will update or reflect that. So now the total has now been updated, and now you'll see, let's save it first. Let's save it. And now it is updated that he now owes us $2,000 additional dollars. And then continue like normal. You can create the next invoice. You can create your next invoice by coming over here. So now they think that this has closed, and that's something too, because that doesn't happen for everybody. But if you've already finished and they've already paid the whole thing, and then you add more things or change the total, you need to update the status so that you can create another invoice. So if that were to happen to you, that it's already been, the estimate has already been invoiced, but then there were changes after, then just come over here to the right side, update status, and say, actually, there was a last minute change. It's not closed anymore. Just change it back to accepted. Change it back to accepted. And then you'll notice here, now we can create that final invoice for that final $2,000. Okay, so there's the 2,000. We can say, okay, yes, I am ready to invoice this whole $2,000 on that following Wednesday. We will save it, and then we will open it back up. And now that we've invoiced for that final $2,000, then it'll show it as checked off, and now the balance is 0. Now it's back to 0. So again, if you have any changes after you fully invoiced the estimate, then just update the status so that you can create additional invoices as much as you need. Okay, so that is how to do progress invoicing. I know that there are sometimes specific situations that are going to be trying to find a specific solution for your business, but this is the most common way to use progress invoicing. All right, so I will cover other videos on unique situations or unique needs for businesses, but this should cover most of your questions. Okay, so this is Progress Invoicing with QuickBooks Online, and I will see you in the next video.